I'm Doug Holdreed, and this PowerPoint presentation is designed to accompany Exploring Art, a Global Thematic Approach, Chapter 4, Deriving Meaning. Earlier we talked about the formal aspects of art, the elements and principles of design, which constitute the form of a work of art. But we can also talk about a work of art in terms of content. Form has to do with what a work of art looks like. Content is about what a work of art means, what the artist intends to say through the art. Also in this chapter we'll look at theories of criticism, ways of writing about art, personal interpretations of art, viewing art within its historical and cultural context, and some of the ways in which we encounter art in the world that we live in. In this photograph by Dorothea Lange, the dominant visual elements are value and texture. We can see how in this black and white photograph certain areas of the picture are emphasized through value contrast and other areas are de-emphasized. In this sculpture piece from the Yoruba culture of Nigeria, we see a couple of visual principles that are often used in religious art: symmetry and verticality. The symmetry creates a feeling of stability and is a sort of reassuring visual device that artists often use, especially in religious art. So the formal aspects of a work of art can contribute to its meaning and the psychological or spiritual effect that it has on it. But when we talk about content, we're usually talking more about the theme or the message of a work of art. The most obvious level of meaning in a work of art is its subject matter. It's a mountain, it's a still life, it's a portrait. Deeper or perhaps more complex layer of meaning is what we call iconography. This refers to culturally understood symbols within a work of art. Sometimes these symbols are hidden because we're unfamiliar with a culture. For people who have grown up in a Christian culture, symbols like a mother with a baby child would be easily recognizable as Mary and the baby Jesus. Iconography from perhaps a Hindu culture would be less accessible to those of us who have grown up in a Christian culture. Our United States Capitol was very intentionally and consciously designed with the ancient Greeks in mind. It echoes some of the values from the ancient classical cultures of the Greeks and Romans. Ideals of democracy and law are symbolized and embodied in the very architecture of our national capital. We've already talked about the role that the artist plays and the way in which that role changes from time to time in the history of art. And we've talked about the art patron, the person that pays for works of art to be done. Sometimes it's not a person, but rather an institution. We're going to go on here to talk about art criticism. Art critics also play a role in the art world, and usually the art critics adhere to a particular philosophy or critical approach to art. This painting, titled The Oath of the Hierati by the artist Jacques-Louis David, is an example of how two different art critics might choose to focus on different aspects of a work of art. The most obvious thing about this piece is that it's a very masculine image about patriotism and some young warriors being sent off to war and pledging their loyalty to the homeland. A less obvious aspect of it is the role that the women play in this picture. Um, think about the women that you see here. I may ask you in another place what you think this painting has to say about the role of women in ancient societies. The formalist approach to art criticism focuses on the design elements, or the formal aspects of a work of art: line, shape, space, color, and the design principles: balance, emphasis, and so forth. Formalist criticism might also talk about media and materials that an artist uses. The ideological approach to art criticism starts with the assumption that all art reflects some particular political agenda, and that it speaks about cultural structures and classes or hierarchies of people within a society. The structuralist approach sees social and cultural structures outside of and beyond the work of art itself influencing the meaning of a work of art, such as language, the study of the signs in the verbal or written communications of a particular period in history which influence a work of art. Deconstructionists try to unveil or reveal the myths and social assumptions that underlie works of art. Here's an example of a deconstructionist artist. The artist's name is Cindy Sherman. She's a photographer. Her images depict some of the stereotypes or assumed identities that women tend to have in our culture. One of the interesting things about Cindy Sherman is that she serves as her own model. She dresses up in these different female stereotypes and then poses in front of her own camera. The psychoanalytic approach to art criticism is very appropriately applied to works of art from the surrealist school, where strong emotional content from the unconscious emerges through the artwork. Another approach to art is the feminist approach, where works of art are assumed to have something to say about gender roles and the place of women, the role that women play within society. We encounter art in all sorts of ways in the everyday world that we live in. Newspapers and magazines are full of images, including photographs and graphic designs. We see reproductions on the walls all the time. Of course, when we think of viewing art, we think about art museums and galleries. But we also see a lot of art in religious and historical and social settings. We all have community and cultural rituals as well that contribute to the richness of our art environment. And we have performance art, artworks that are not so much within buildings, but out there on the streets that we live in. In traditional or tribal cultures, works of art are very much integrated into the cultural and the ritual life of communities. This piece is from a culture in the Northwest in British Columbia in Canada, and it's a totem. It's part of a very meaningful, symbolic, and really magical connection that art has with the spiritual reality of the people.